Now here with us we have Hedwig Morvay, who's the Director of Strategy in Europe at ERSTE Foundation. Hello.
Hello.
How are you doing? How is the conference going, the forum?
Fine. I'm very happy that I managed to come here, and I knew that I will be meeting many colleagues, and that was my primary reason. Yeah. I'm always happy to cooperate with the Open Society Balkans office colleagues as well. We had many successful initiatives earlier together, so I wanted to come to listen to the people, to exchange, and to also have some side meetings and to kind of get inspired with some new ideas what might emerge from this event.
Okay, what's the role of how does ERSTE Foundation see itself in this process of the EU enlargement and Western Balkans accession to the EU?
Well, the ERSTE Foundation is traditionally committed to the region because when it was established, and it's now like more than 15 years ago, one of its core regions was the Balkans, and still it is, because the logic of the ERSTE Foundation is being the majority single shareholder of the ERSTE Bank. So basically the foundation owns the bank, and the logic of the foundation is where we generate our profit and the dividends from which we then can operate. These are then the countries where we invest back in the societies. And the EU accession and EU enlargement of the Balkan countries is one of our basically priority topics. And we are working on this at different levels by supporting civil society, but also on supporting policy development and running advocacy initiatives or supporting advocacy initiatives. So we are kind of very, very much involved in this process.
So you believe on the role that the civil society organizations hold? Because, for example, from the Kosovo's perspective, right after in the beginning of the 2000s, where the institutions were much weaker, we saw that the civil society organizations and international organizations had much more of a say, much more of importance. And then later, especially from people looking from outside, from the NGO sector, from the private sector and from institutions, it seemed that the civil society organizations the perception was that they had less of a role. So you still believe that they have a big role in EU accession?
Well, let's be clear. It is the task of the governments to do this business, and the governments are the partners, the negotiating partners of the EU in this process. Civil society and all the other parts of the society can be only partnering with the governments and supporting the process. And of course, in some cases, it is not only supporting, it is also criticizing, it is also playing the role of a watchdog, it's correcting. Basically that should be the role of civil society. On one hand, correcting, on the other hand, supporting. And it's very important that at the end there is a partnership. If there is a common agreement that country is going in the direction of the EU accession, then there should be collaboration. And what that means is obviously changing, and sometimes it's more a corrective, and then in some other cases it's more a partnership. But I think this dynamics is something what is very interesting and also exciting. And it can be that sometimes the role of civil society seems more prominent, and in some other times not. It's also country by country a different situation, but I would mention, when it comes to the enlargement process to the Western Balkans, there is this regional logic and regional dimension of the entire story. So the kind of the networking and the regional collaboration of civil society organizations in this process is also very important. And that is very, very visible and very dynamic, and we have so many platforms. This is one of those platforms, but there is the Civil Society Forum linked to the Western Balkans Summit Series and to the Berlin process. There are other formats of the Western Balkans 6 where civil society is involved. So I think it's a healthy kind of ratio, I would say, how civil society is present.
And for the last question, there's been some anxiety within the civil society organizations in the region. It started a bit from the closing of DFID or DFID, and then now closing of USAID, and now we see also some old democracies within the EU changing, cutting down on expenditure and making their development missions smaller and maybe moving their focus maybe into Africa and less into the Western Balkans. So how do you see that, and how would you address that fear that some organizations and some pro-liberal organizations that they have?
Yeah, well, this is now a reality we have to face, and we have to deal with it in a much more creative way than what we did so far. I think that we were kind of used to the fact that there are large donor agencies, organizations there, and some of the large parts of the civil society were relying on this continuous kind of secured support. And now it's the time that organizations think more about sustainability, though I hate this word when it comes in relation to the civil society organizations, because it's very difficult to be achieved. But I think that now some new models of creating resources by civil society organizations themselves must be maybe figured out, and also different ways of supporting civil society organizations should be figured out. So it's not anymore that large international donor organizations will be the core supporters. I think that domestic actors should get more active. And for this I saw a very encouraging sign in Eastern Europe and in Central Europe, where successful businesses realized that if they don't support civil society organizations and they don't invest in, for example, democracy building, that it endangers their own businesses and their own future. So we see now new funders coming to the scene, investing massively in civil society support, because they realize that it is for their own benefit. And I expect that something like this should be happening also in our region.
Hedwig, thank you very much. And also thank you for ending on a positive note.
Thank you.
Thanks.